I'm with the Catch Wrestling Alliance, where we keep real wrestling alive. Thank you very much for joining me. We have a really interesting live stream for you today. So thank you for joining us, however you are, whether it be our podcast or Twitch or YouTube. Everyone's welcome, and feel free to comment, ask questions or whatever in the chat wherever you're watching from. So, without further ado, there is some really interesting commentary that was released last week. It was an interview with grappling guru John Danaher on the Joe Rogan Experience, where he talks about the deficiencies of jiu-jitsu, right? So um, he also talks about kind of like how the jiu-jitsu game has evolved, and just like how in general like things have changed. And I think specifically for no-gi, I think that's where the biggest advances in jiu-jitsu are being made. Still, it is different from catch wrestling, so it's kind of like what we talked about last week, where I wanted it to be clear that um, uh, catch wrestling is still different from jujitsu and even no gi jujitsu, because no gi still has a different kind of mindset and a different rule set. So I think the comments from John Danaher kind of feed into that. So I kind of want to play some of the audio. I don't know if YouTube would be adverse to having me um, like actually share the video or whatever, but I'll at least play the audio for you so you can kind of hear what I'm talking about. So, and this is specific. So, right here, this clip, it'll have John Danaher talk about what he considers are the current deficiencies in no-gi grappling or no-gi jiu-jitsu, and so then he'll list them right now in this audio clip, and then we'll talk about them. Okay, so maybe I'll play. Maybe I'll let it go on for a little bit longer. So because right here he just lists them right off, one by one, and then maybe I'll just let him talk about it a little bit so you guys can get a little bit more of a background. And also too, if you want to see the full clip, it's only 6 minutes long. It's on YouTube on the Powerful JRE channel. So I think right there, Joe Rogan puts out like little clips of his interviews, especially since he has like some exclusive deal on Spotify. So anyway, without further ado, here's John Danaher on the Joe Rogan Experience.
Jiu-jitsu always had three major deficiencies: leg locks, takedowns, and thirdly, the one that no one talks about, the ability to impose top position once it's gained. A huge part of my career has been the recognition and the attempt to change these three great faults in jiu-jitsu. As much as I love jiu-jitsu, we've got to take a step back and take an honest look at it. It's got these three deeply entwined faults within it. Leg locks was the most obvious one. In a game which was supposedly all about control leading to submission, there was an arbitrary rule that 50% of the body couldn't be attacked. That was lunacy. And over the last 10 years, I believe it's fair to say we've reached a point where that is no longer the case, that is a great weakness within jiu-jitsu. The younger generation of jiu-jitsu, I would match them against any grappling art in the world on leg locks with no fear whatsoever. That I couldn't have said that 15 years ago, but things have changed. Now we need to address the other two great weaknesses. Jiu-jitsu has to do something about the crisis which is starting to emerge around takedowns and the ability to impose top position. What you're seeing among jiu-jitsu athletes now who go into mixed martial arts is they just have to turn to other arts. They have to learn wrestling. They have to learn these, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the truth is that jiu-jitsu has become a smaller and smaller component of mixed martial arts rather than what it was when it first started, which is a dominant force in mixed martial arts. Now, for most of the athletes, jiu-jitsu is something you learn to stay out of some pesky submission holds. It's not the be-all and focus for most of the athletes in mixed martial arts. Most of them are centered around kickboxing skills and wrestling. I think that we've done a great job of overcoming one out of three great problems in jiu-jitsu, but there's still two more to go.
Catch new episodes of Joe Rogan.
All right. So hopefully you guys all heard that clearly. So let's go ahead and kind of break it down here. So I listed the three components. So leg locks, actually, Danaher and his students are now world renowned for their leg lock ability. Gary Tonin has been able to do a lot of leg locks. I think also even in MMA competition. Of course, Gordon Ryan, considered one of the best ever in no-gi grappling. He's been able to beat like all the big names and stuff. Um, so um, so John Danaher has basically been able to kind of revitalize or repopularize something that has been always part of grappling, really, especially since catch wrestling never barred those types of holds like leg locks. So they've been around. And then even this past week or the past couple of weeks, people have been sharing some ancient like uh, kind of like a carving or they'd be called like a bas relief kind of situation where they show like a centaur heel hooking somebody. So from like ancient Greece or something like that. So a lot of these holds, actually, nothing is new, right? So humans have discovered how to do all these kinds of holds, especially submission holds and pins and takedowns, slams, all this stuff. People have been doing that since the dawn of time, really. Um, but the thing is when we incorporate all these types of rules and stuff, and so in particular, I think it's probably something like since it's been solidified by an organization like IBJJF that everyone respects, then the rules that are adopted by something major like IBJJF, then they get like then like schools and academies all around the world will adopt those rules. So what we saw, and actually what I've seen firsthand, is that like you get a lot of these schools that like really follow IBJJF rules. So that means that people will only learn what the Achilles lock as a white belt, and then they won't really learn any other like leg thing until brown or black belt. And even then, might not be you might not learn too much, right? But it wasn't until a lot of these schools, especially like no-gi stuff, has been gaining in popularity. Then you'll see that say like IBJJF had to change the rules, right? Because they barred a lot of different types of leg locks and stuff. So um, now because all these other promotions are allowing all kinds of leg locks, especially a no-gi competition, then IBJJF had to under pressure change rules, right? And so I think that's why also too, what a few weeks ago, Gordon Ryan was talking about how maybe the gi will just go away and it'll go extinct because no-gi is actually much more dynamic and much more interesting to watch than a gi match, and also too um, like there's much more freedom. So even in a lot of these no-gi competitions, people who are ranked like lower ranked in jiu-jitsu, so they're not even brown belts or black belts, they're still allowed to use leg locks in like competition. So that shows like stuff like that the work that people who are trying to promote leg locks in jiu-jitsu, they've been successful at kind of getting a lot of mass adoption to or at least the idea that leg locks should be allowed, especially in lower ranked matches, right? So with regards to their jiu-jitsu belt system, right? So that being said, like how in the clip you just heard John Danaher, I think he even said like, well, we've out of the three deficiencies that he sees in jujitsu, the leg lock thing is pretty much taken care of, and like how he said that like, oh, he would feel comfortable putting up any modern no-gi grappler against other styles with regards to leg locks. So then let's go on to point number 2, takedowns. Okay, I really want to talk about this because John Danaher in the clip talks about how people have to then go to other arts, right? And so this is also diminishing like the prominence of jujitsu, right? He also says in the clip that jiu-jitsu used to be such a formidable force that everyone really had to incorporate or had to study really hard in the early days. Right now, it's becoming less of a thing, and John Danaher in the clip says that it becomes something that someone will learn to get out or to make sure that they stay out of some pesky submissions. Right, so that's what he said in the clip, and to kind of emphasize the decreasing in the prominence of jujitsu, because when you talk about an MMA situation, staying on top and kind of like the wrestling aspect shows to be a more of a winning strategy, right? And wrestling's been showing its dominance in jujitsu, or I'm sorry, in MMA for the longest time now. So that's kind of what he's talking about. Then, so his point is that, like, so say if someone starts off uh, doing jujitsu and then they want to say do MMA or continue higher ranked or like bigger jujitsu competitions, or say something like ADCC. For some reason, people like say people from jiu-jitsu perspective, they think of ADCC as a wrestling competition. From my point of view, it's still a jiu-jitsu competition, but because there's a like you can't really pull guard in ADCC, then all of a sudden they're thinking, oh, it's wrestling. And I think what's happened over the years is like when I hear, because I've been working in jujitsu schools for a long time, so when I hear a lot of people from a jujitsu perspective, they talk about wrestling. A lot of times that's what they talk about, takedowns. Or that's what they mean when they say wrestling is takedowns. I think that's one of the big thing that's become synonymous with the idea of wrestling, especially for someone who comes from a jiu-jitsu background. There's more to wrestling than that, but what Danaher is saying in his an interview is that, so since jiu-jitsu is so lacking, at least modern, like Brazilian-based jiu-jitsu is lacking in takedowns, then people go to other styles. So not just wrestling, but I think maybe they even go to judo as well, especially if you're doing gi. Um, then if you're a gi practitioner, then it'd be great. I think it's a spectacular idea if you learn judo as well, since you're both wearing gi, right? Um, so I think that's one of the things that he's mentioning, where it's like, well, you have to learn these other things you have to venture out, right? Okay, but this is the point I want to make, is that since there's so much more to wrestling, and in particular catch wrestling, is that you can get takedowns, but the thing is, they're learning a lot of these takedowns from, like, say, amateur wrestling, right? So what that means is, not to when I say amateur wrestling, doesn't necessarily mean that I'm talking down or talking bad about freestyle and folk style, but those are considered the amateur styles, right? Especially since they're in the Olympics, it's supposed to be done by amateurs. Um, so that's why I meant that. So that's what I mean when I say amateur wrestling. But the thing is, amateur wrestling is its own sport, right? So it's they've already, even though they came from catch wrestling, they've already taken out all the submission holds. Those submission holds aren't coming back, and so then there is a disregard for the threat of submissions, right? So it still works out pretty well in MMA. Whereas, like, just kind of going from a amateur wrestling perspective, if you can just take that person down, stay on top, there's not much danger. Just ground and pound them, keep that pinning pressure on them. You'll still be able to win, if not get that TKO, right? So, but the threat of the submission is still there. And when you get some good people, or like people who maybe John Danaher is trying to train to, like, say, like, to, because he's getting more people into MMA as well, then the threat of someone who can do good submission holds, or can get these really good submission holds, or even someone like a Shinya Aoki who's able to submit a lot of people in MMA fights, then you have to be like, you have to take submissions seriously, right? And so this is where I would want to insert the whole notion of authentic catch wrestling. So is John Danaher, um, in him talking about the deficiencies of jiu-jitsu, he is, without specifically saying it, he is actually promoting authentic catch wrestling, because I think he himself will see the deficiency in amateur wrestling being that there's no awareness of submissions. And so what have we been seeing in these past few years? We've been seeing high level amateur wrestlers getting submitted by, actually, Gordon Ryan, or other people, like, who are trained by John Danaher, right? So you have what Gordon submitted, what, Bo Nickel or whatever, and then Tony Ramos got submitted by Gordon Ryan's little brother or whatever, really fast using leg locks. Right. So actually, I wanted to make a joke on maybe make a social media post where it's like, this past weekend in the Pan American Freestyle Championships, the United States men's team was undefeated. Every man in the different weight divisions all got gold. So they all got gold medals. They all won. But then just think, if, like, a year from now, if they do a submission only, a match against some teenager, imagine them all getting submitted by some leg lock, right, or something, by some teenage boy who's only a blue belt or a purple belt, right? So that my point is that in amateur wrestling, it's its own thing now. It's really not catch wrestling. It's gone so far away from catch wrestling that they leave themselves vulnerable to get submitted by, um, you know, boys, right? Like Nicky Ryan, right? I believe when he submitted Tony Ramos, I don't think he's 18, or I think he's 18 now, but I don't. Anyway, so some big time freestyle guy and folk style guy got submitted. So then that wants to, like, going back to then John Danaher's point about takedowns, is that you still want to have takedowns, but catch wrestling takedowns still keep you aware of, like, the threat of the submission, right? So a lot of the takedowns you're seeing in amateur, they're great and all, and they're valuable and they can help out in MMA situations and whatnot, but a lot of them do not take the threat of submission seriously, right? So you can still counter, and that's why you'll see people like Bo Nickel, Ramos, and who was that other guy? Some bigger guy that got submitted by power half by Gordon Ryan. I forgot, but anyway, all these really high level, great amateur wrestlers getting submitted, and that power half is not a submission really. It's uncomfortable, but I think Gordon Ryan just jumped on his back and put it on him real fast. So then it just, like, cranked his neck. But then he tried to claim that it was like his ankle hurting or whatever. Oh, damn, it was like a downy. Okay, so moving on to the next point, and then I'll go ahead and take your questions. And thank you for asking questions already. So yeah, we'll go ahead and let them add up a little bit, and then I'll get to them in a couple minutes here. So let's get to the third point, as the third deficiency of modern jiu-jitsu, as according to John Danaher. So lack of ability to impose position once it's gained. So the lack of ability to impose, like, top position once it's gained. All right. So that goes back to, I think, a few months ago, John Danaher posted, and you can look back where I did a live stream about that one too, where on John Danaher's social media, he talked about the importance of pinning, right? So pinning is vitally important, right? And then even on John Danaher's post, he talked about how pinning, if you approach the whole idea of grappling with kind of like this pinning mindset, then of course you're not going to pin someone in a no gi competition, but you're going to be maintaining control over their body, and then you can then allow them to move when you want them to move, so that they can go into your trap that you've set up, right? Your submission trap, right? So that's one of the ideas of pinning, and I think that's one of the things I've been talking about for years and years. But of course, I'm not John Danaher, so that's why I want to, like, when people like him from a more popular martial art say things like that, then I want to highlight all those things, because it's true. And this is stuff I teach in my class as well. When I'm sparring too at jiu-jitsu schools, that's what happens. And they talk about the pressure and this and that, but it's really just a technique. It's the the idea of pinning that can set up submission holds, right? So in catch wrestling, you can end the match with a pin, but also the whole idea of pinning can help you to pass guard. I think I've been wanting to do some videos. I think they'll definitely be doing them for members of the CWA Academy. So that's our online academy, talking about different ways of pressure passing. Maybe we'll do something for that on our YouTube channel as well. But I really like the whole idea of a lot of showing, like, even a lot of common jiu-jitsu passing, guard passing, but from a catch wrestling perspective. So I think we'll probably work on that as well. Actually, it'll definitely be going. It's already on my list of things to make sure that I include in for the members of the CWA Academy. So that'll be going up there. But hopefully, we'll get some stuff for everyone here on the YouTube channel, because actually I really appreciate all you guys. So going back to the point about imposing the top position, in that clip from John Danaher, before he lists the problems of jiu-jitsu, he briefly talks about this point where in jiu-jitsu, he says there's kind of like an unspoken agreement where if someone is on bottom, they'll pretty much try to stay on bottom. They'll try to submit you from bottom. If you pass their guard, they try to put you back into guard. It's kind of more rare if they try to sweep you, right? So if they try to go from the bottom position to the top position, and so he's saying that a lot of jiu-jitsu practitioners, they don't get that practice that they will see in like a MMA match, where if you take someone down, a lot of times they're not going to just hold you in guard. A lot of times they're going to try to stand back up, right? So this is going to be another difference that I want to point out about wrestling and catch wrestling. So amateur wrestling and catch wrestling. In catch wrestling, a lot of times the goal is to get someone on the ground and to keep them on the ground. And this is exactly what John Danaher is talking about. If you can take someone down, then impose the top game. So that means keeping them down and you staying on top, right? Not you pulling them down, like pulling them into your guard and keeping them pulled down, right? By wrapping your legs around them, breaking their posture, keeping them down. It's you taking them down, staying on top, using that pinning pressure, setting up your submission holds, setting up your, like, if you want to like set up your pass of their legs, especially since a lot of John Danaher's guys are really good at setting up leg locks, leg entanglements to the submission, right? So you want to be using your pinning pressure to stop those legs from winding around yours, using your hips, right? Especially if they start to get a leg entanglement, using your hip movement to get the proper angle so that you can escape those types of leg entanglements and pass their guard, or just use that pinning pressure to just shut down their leg mobility, so that you can pass the guard, so you're just clear of the legs. And then once you're clear of the legs, then you can use your pinning pressure, right, to keep them either face down or face up. But then you can set up your submission holds from there. And so that's kind of like one of the most important things, one of the most important ways of thinking that you want to have in your mind. And so that's, again, like one of the reasons why I'm saying that John Danaher is inadvertently promoting authentic catch wrestling. So why do I say that? Because authentic catch wrestling has always been um, cognizant of the submission holds, right? So even back in Farmer Burns days, he mostly talks about pinning people. So Farmer Burns is really in his writings all about the pin, but he also writes that a high level wrestler will also know all the submission holds, all the ins and outs of the submission holds, right? So it could be like in a lot of his instructional things, he wants to focus on the pins. But also in that time period, the pin was huge. It's still a huge thing in amateur wrestling as well. So uh, pins were, very, very important. I know nowadays maybe it's not so much, but the idea of pinning can still keep you winning, right? So whether it be an MMA match, catch wrestling match, or even a no-gi submission only match, especially submission only, you really can you can get that submission using that whole idea of pinning. So um, let me see. So we went over all his three main points, but again, they all seem to support the idea of authentic catch wrestling. So authentic catch wrestling, what does it have? Leg locks. It allows leg locks. Takedowns, but not just amateur takedowns where you just take someone down and maybe you fall into a triangle choke, or some kind of even like what they call a kimura, we call double wrist lock. There's all these different things that um, people can, all these different counter submissions that people can get on you if you take them down in a amateur wrestling kind of way. Uh, yeah, I think the main thing was what the guillotine, right? So a lot of times amateurs just throw their heads in there, and they try to rush somebody, and then they get choked, they get guillotined, right? And then the third thing was like the lack of ability to impose position once it's gained, right? So, or impose top position once it's gained. So again, pinning, and then you want to set up that submission, right? So this sounds like authentic catch wrestling. And so what I mean by authentic catch wrestling too is like, it's not just like these, not catch wrestling you learn over one weekend or something like that. It's these, like, catch wrestling has a long history of performance, right? Of winning, right? Winning matches, and against like some of the top people from around the world, because even back in the early 1900s, people were traveling for fights, right? People from different countries, the best in Japan and Europe and all that, South America, they were traveling to have these big matches, even India and stuff like that. So um, people who were considered the best, who can, I'm sure you can't just, I think, I don't like when people try to say like, oh, people back in the day aren't as good as modern grapplers, because um, it's just not true. I think a lot of these old time grapplers would destroy a lot of modern grapplers because of like different reasons, like work ethic, the whole idea of, they have these ideas that John Danaher is considering weaknesses of jiu-jitsu, right? They have knowledge of leg locks, they have knowledge of takedowns, but they're still aware of the submission holds, right? And they're able to impose the top position once they get it, the match to the ground, right? So if they get the match to the ground, regardless, and this is the other thing I'd like to point out, is that once you're really good at this whole idea of pinning, or what in catch wrestling, what we call we call mat wrestling. So that's kind of like the whole what is it in judo? It's called newaza. So like all the ground fighting stuff. In wrestling, we call it mat wrestling. So that's all the stuff you do like on the ground, all the counters and stuff. But a lot of these counters are to get back onto the top position. All right. So sometimes when I'm rolling at a jiu-jitsu school, I usually just call it turtle guard, right? Because, but unfortunately, someone like made some sort of their DVD called Turtle Guard, right? So anyway, but I think that's the best way to get someone from a jiu-jitsu background to understand what you're talking about. Where it's like, yeah, you can give your back, you can let someone take you down, and you can give them their back because really, who cares? If your choke defense is great, you're not going to get choked, and you're going to be able to counter and get back onto the top position, and then you can impose the top position, like John Danaher is talking about, or like how John Danaher says is a weakness in modern jiu-jitsu, modern nogi, right? So this is why I'm saying that all these things that he's talking about is or it's like the idea that is like the embodiment or that authentic catch wrestling embodies, right? So um that's why I'm saying that John Danaher is inadvertently promoting authentic catch wrestling. It's not like this catch wrestling where you see like I even saw like some video floating around where people are doing all these fancy holds where they're letting go of the top pressure to do some weird submission or whatever. I doubt it'll work. Maybe it'll work against some jujitsu person or whatever. But it's like come on, guys. So this is the unfortunate thing. So we're getting more people who are trying to make catch wrestling like McDonald's or something, and you can learn it real quick and the fast food version, and then so those people might be losing in matches. At least that's my opinion, right? So, all right. So I think I've gone through all the main points and kind of made all of my points. All right. So let's go ahead and get to your questions here. So keep on asking, and so I'll start going through them. Ripper Catch Wrestling. Hello from the UK. So uh, hello from LA, right? From LA to the UK. Right. The Lurker. Screw point. Go for the pin or submission. Yep. I agree 100%. Hike, amateurs, right? So yeah, the amateurs on all sides, where they're talking about what, like the calling someone using it as an insult. Okay, so let's see. Vegan gains. If neck cranks and cross faces aren't allowed, that's like saying guard pulling isn't allowed. But scooters are more annoying than neck cranks. Yeah, yes. But in a way, if you kind of keep that whole top pressure, if you keep these ideas, even from John Danaher, those 3 ideas, you'll still be able to beat those butt scooters. I don't really mind them anymore, really, and so because I'm rolling against them all the time. So um, yeah, there's all these different ways to kind of keep pressure, even amongst themselves. I mean, it's not like they're not aware of the dangers of seated guard, so they have a lot of counters in no-gi jiu-jitsu against seated guard. So let's work on beating them right all the time. Okay, so another comment from Vegan Gains. If catch wrestlers would focus less on whether a mount is called or whether a move is called a kimura or double wrist, and spend more time on the mats, catch wrestling would be more popular. Yeah. We're getting a lot, and that's the thing too, where it's like I think even John Danaher in that clip, kind of talking about where it's like people have to venture out to different styles to learn or to learn takedowns and whatnot. Unfortunately, I believe catch wrestling is a little bit more complete because, say, it embodies all the things that John Danaher is saying is missing in modern jiu-jitsu. So, but the thing is, you'll have a lot of unqualified teachers claiming to do catch wrestling. We've even a few months ago we had to talk about it on this channel with that gentleman Sam Yang from the Southpaw podcast, where he said that he has a certification from a certain school, but because like it's called like grappling, then some of his like classmates who also get the same same certification, then all of a sudden, even though they're not officially catch wrestlers, they're calling themselves catch wrestlers, right? And so then they're selling their DVDs of catch wrestling and this and that, and but it's like, so it's more like judo or whatever, and they never trained with Roy Wood and in Wigan. They never trained with John Strickland on the East Coast or whatever. So I think that's a problem as well with catch wrestling, because it is a style, and so you should learn from someone who knows the style. Okay, Adriano Ramos. Is Farmer Burns' book worth it to get? Yeah, why not? Why not? Because you can get the photocopies of his correspondence course, and someone photocopied everything and put it all into one volume, and that you can easily get on like Amazon. I don't think it was very expensive. It's just like photocopies, really. If you want to try to get the original original copies, I'm sure that's probably expensive. See if the paper from back then lasted. I had a chance to like someone that I know, he collected, like, I don't know if he had all of them, all of the classes, but he has a lot of them. He spent a lot of time going around to different places, different bookshops and stuff, and he ended up getting a lot. So I was able to hold the actual lessons that Farmer Burns used to mail to people. It was really cool. But yeah, the paper is all it's old. It's okay. From Hike, let me see. Ability to impose position is what dictates if a martial art is effective. Yeah, I think that's a good point, Hike, because um, it's almost like when that joke where like someone wants to show some kind of wrist lock or whatever, and they're like, "Grab my wrist," and then someone grabs a wrist, but then they're like, "Oh no, the other wrist," or something like that. So um, I think that's kind of goes along with your point where it's like martial art really has to set up that situation. So you have to impose, so like how John Danaher is talking about imposing the top game once you get it down. Yeah, you have to, like, regardless of how they grab you or whatever, you have to impose your strategy, right? So yeah, that is also part of, like, say, like catch wrestling. So that, again, I think it kind of shows that John Danaher is inadvertently promoting authentic catch wrestling. Yeah, let's go ahead and get to the next questions. So yeah, keep them coming, guys. I really appreciate them. From Ripper Catch Wrestling. Do you think John Danaher knows what catch wrestling is? I don't think he knows what authentic catch wrestling is, but I believe he's heard the term, because I'm hearing more and more people talk about it, and it's becoming more and more of a word that people are throwing around. So I'm sure he's heard of it, and I think he has an idea of what it is, but I think his idea is probably just wrong. Let me see. Tag 1080. I made a sarcastic post on the BJJ Reddit about this video. A couple BJJ guys commented that they have a hard time holding people down when they drill with the bottom person just standing up. Damn, great comment, Tag. So there's like some evidence, at least some evidence that at least people are commenting that this is a real thing that John Danaher is talking about. Holding people down. Yeah, I've experienced that too. It's like it's pretty easy to just go, just roll over. And what like how Danaher talks about, like you get them down and they just hip heist and get back out. So this would be another. So John Dan. So I want you guys to focus on this part, right? So Danaher says that people they'll hip heist, so that means they'll go. Say if you get them down onto their back, they'll hip heist, so that means they'll go back to say more like a turtle position, and then they're able to stand back up. So this would be a difference between amateur wrestling and catch wrestling. In catch wrestling, yes, you can do that. You can stand back up if you want, but I would say like more of the catch wrestling way would be to not stand back up. You can hip heist or whatever, but then you try to get a counter move, right? And see if you can't get back to the top position, right? So that would be a difference between the amateur perspective and the catch wrestling perspective. But tag 1080 kind of gave us some evidence that what Danaher says is true, or is at least a common experience for jiu-jitsu practitioners. Greg Melita, no heel hooks in catch wrestling though, right? Why not? Why not? Yeah, totally fine. Ichi-san, technique wise, besides them's, he has a lot of M's in the besides it's a lot different. Okay. Yes. Yes. I don't know. I'm not quite sure what you're saying, but yeah, technique wise, there's a lot of difference. I think that's what he's saying. Oh, he adds another question, or he has another comment here. Besides the rules, it's a lot different technique wise. Oh, besides the rules, is it a lot different technique wise? Besides, are you talking about the rules of catch wrestling and what's it called, and like jiu-jitsu or whatever? I'll put it this way. I really like the way my coach in England, Roy Wood, put it, where it's like catch wrestling is as close to a real fight as you can get, because like we don't have time limits, or at least in our modern matches we have 20-minute time limits. So, and no points, right? So if you get taken down, who cares? They're not getting any extra credit, or they're not getting any points, and you still have to defend yourself, right? So you're kind of in a real fight in that sense. Or so like if you're in a street fight or whatever, if you get taken down and you're not knocked out, you're still in it. So there's no, like, the referee's really not gonna, if you get held down and you can't get out, even though you're not pinned, the referee's not gonna break it up. They're not gonna stand you back up like what would happen in MMA, and other types of matches, right? Even amateur wrestling matches, right? You get stood back up, especially in freestyle. Um, Catch wrestling, no. If you're held down, then and someone's like trying to crank your neck or whatever, then you have to fight your way back out. Granted, there's no like strikes, there's no like obvious punches or kicks. You can kind of nudge them a little bit with elbows or whatever, but officially there's no real, like, you can't really wind up and strike somebody. But the thing is, it's like it's realistic in that you're being attacked or you're attacking someone, and really the ref is there just for your safety, but they're not going to stop that attack until you submit or you're pinned, right? So that's kind of the difference. So so then there's a lot of techniques that come from that perspective. And so kind of like what I was talking about at the beginning of this of the live stream, with regards to some dominant federation like IBJJF, right? So since they have their rules, that has kind of also influenced the game of jiu-jitsu. And I think this is what's happening, or this is what John Danaher is talking about as well, is that, like, so we have this dominant federation that they make up their rules, and they have like points They have short time limits. So then that changes the game of jiu-jitsu. Same thing with amateur wrestling. They took out all the submission holds. They added points, and then they shrunk the time limit for the matches. So then that changes the way it's done. That also makes for different techniques that help people to game the system. So hopefully that answers your questions, right? So yeah, the techniques would kind of go according to the environment, right? Okay, let's go to the next question. So tag 1080 again. I think when jiu-jitsu guys say the pin isn't a win, think of modern competitive wrestling where if it's just a second or two, in our school it is 5 seconds to pin. You have to seriously dominate someone. Yeah, yeah, I think that's a good point. I think, and I really think that it's great that your school recognizes that, recognizes the value of pins, right? So in our matches, we actually have a 2 second pin, so it's still pretty short, um, but I think you'll see that it still shows some dominance because within 2 seconds, if you're not dominating them, a really good wrestler will have already hip heisted, or like John Danaher was talking about. They would have rolled over and escaped. So you have to really hold them down, especially against higher level opponents. Greg Melita. I meant though catch wrestling competition rules don't allow for heel hooks. Um, no, they allow for heel hooks. You can do a heel hook. Ripper catch wrestling. Bro, everything but chokes is allowed in classical catch wrestling. Yeah, that's why I was kind of, I don't want to talk about it too much, but yeah, I mean it's kind of okay to kind of give a little elbow nudge or whatever. Um, but put a knee in their face or whatever. Uh, but it seems like a closed fist, was never really allowed. Okay, Greg. Interesting. Well, I didn't know that chokes weren't allowed. So yeah, in classical or just like in catch wrestling, chokes. So three techniques basically. So it'd be what bulldog choke, guillotine, and what's it called? Rear naked choke. Because we do neck cranks, right? Which show more control over the person. All right, and you can get a submission faster, and um, it just shows more dominance, right? Greg, again, love learning about catch. Cool. I love talking about it. So thank you for being here. Ripper catch wrestling. Chokes aren't going to help you to pin someone. Just my 2 cents. Yes, that's true. I also want to add Billy Robinson's 2 cents. So when I was with him, so if you don't know who Billy Robinson is, that's totally fine. Totally fine. He's been really hyped up as a big time catch wrestling guru. He unfortunately passed away a few years ago. He was one of my coaches, and I went down to train with him in Arkansas. And so when we were alone together, he kind of talked about the idea of chokes and how he wanted to make sure that I didn't allow chokes in Catch Wrestling Alliance events, because it's basically keeping to what we call like the code of catch wrestling, so the way things have been done for over 100 years. Um, so yeah, he was saying it's like it doesn't really show the control as well, and he said a long time ago the sense that he got is that people, not only does it not show, like it doesn't lead to pinning somebody, but a person can, like, with by bad luck, get caught in a choke, right? So then a lot of times people didn't consider chokes to be that superior of a technique. And then again, I always have to mention the interview with catch wrestling champion Earl Caddock, right? So back around World War One, he was in the military, and they had him training some soldiers. And one of the things he said, like the way you can tell that if someone, because he'll have them grappling, right? He'll have the soldiers doing hand-to-hand combat, and he says the way to tell if someone is green, right? So if someone's like a beginner or a novice, is if they're trying to choke each other. So then it's his job to, you know, show them better things you could be doing for hand-to-hand combat. Mazahira Hassan, top 10 catch wrestling schools in California. Good vibes. Top 10, I think we got like we got me here in LA. You're welcome to train if you're in LA. So your next question from Mazahira: Are chokes allowed nowadays or whatever? I think that's what you're asking, right? Chokes were always taught, because he says like so his full comment is, are they not are they taught in catch wrestling? Yes. So even in the old catch wrestling books, in the uh, barred technique section, they were, right. So, but the thing is, my point is, like, if you're thinking about like, whoa, chokes are not really part of it, like, if like retrain your mind to not value chokes so much, right? Um, because they're really not as helpful as you think. A lot of people are good at defending chokes. There was a post by an acquaintance of mine who's this big time black belt competitor in the women's division. She just put a post out about like how a lot of people are giving their backs nowadays because they're good at defending chokes. So then they try to give their back to see if they can't pass your guard somehow. Maybe they'll give their back, and then as you pull them in and you're trying to do your choke, then once you relieve some pressure, then they spin around, and all of a sudden they're in your guard, but they're on top of you, right? So it's Tata uh, Ribeiro, right? So anyway, big time Brazilian black belt in the women's division. She lives around here anyway, but even these black belts are talking about how choking isn't all that. All right, so hopefully you can kind of change your perspective, because then people seem to be shocked when they're like, oh, no chokes, but seriously, guys, a lot of people are so good at defending them. You should be good at defending them as well, right? Even as a catch wrestler, it's I don't want to say it's easy to defend, right? But there's a lot of kind of safeguards that you can put into place while you're grappling, by even your head position and whatnot, to prevent you from getting choked, right? So with that, choke prevention doesn't necessarily prevent getting neck cranked, right? So that's why neck cranks are much more of a threat than the chokes. So I hope you can kind of change your perspective. Adriano Ramos, what is your impression of Billy Robinson as a man? Oh, I loved him, and he was probably different than what you see in some of the videos where he's kind of acting rough and stuff, and yelling at people. That's his coach character, right? Because Billy Riley, so the coach of Billy Robinson, was his style of coaching might not be considered kind, right, nowadays. So the way Billy Robinson put it, like, being coached, but like Billy Riley can make you feel 3 inches tall, and he would do all kinds of things to basically keep you feeling 3 inches tall, right? And so Billy kind of told me different types of stories about some of the things that Billy Riley would say to all the wrestlers and stuff. So um, um, I think because Robinson, kind of developed that, or at least train in that way with under Riley, then as he coaches, then he kind of coaches in a similar way. From what Robinson told me, he's not as not a. I don't think he would put people down like Riley did. I think he was actually much nicer, even though you hear him yelling and stuff in videos, and then but outside of class, oh man, so cool, so cool, it's so fun to be around. Okay, yeah, I think so. Back to Ichi-san. Um, yeah, thanks for the answer. Do you know any other schools on the East Coast? Yeah, you got to go to John Strickland. Hopefully, you can make the pilgrimage down to South Carolina. Yeah, you can also find him easily, or at least his organization easily, on Facebook. It's called American Hook Wrestling. So I think Facebook is probably where you would contact him. So American Hook Wrestling on Facebook. American Hook Wrestling. So hopefully I said that clearly enough. Okay. Mazahira Hassan. I'm actually an Indian, but when I learned about catch wrestling, I literally fell in love with it because it's a submission art, which teaches all types of submissions and has no belt rankings. Very cool. Very cool. And catch wrestling literally suits me a lot. Sounds great. Sounds great. Mr. Lee, are there any schools in Las Vegas, Nevada? Take me out there. bring me out. I usually actually for the past couple of years of, especially during COVID, I've been having to go out there more often. So maybe we can set up something. So you let me know if if you have a school or you have some place where we can train. Oh, Drew Galbraith. So Drew, he is a member of the CWA Academy. I kind of mentioned that earlier in the live stream about how we'll be putting some more videos about pressure passing and stuff for the advanced students. So Drew, thank you for commenting. He says, try the online academy with Raul. So yeah, if you're not in LA or if you're not near South Carolina, then you can always do our online academy. So that'd be through our website. Yep, some more questions coming in. Let's see. Oh, thanks. Tactical Casey. Working through the Catch Wrestling Alliance Academy courses right now from Canada. Loving it. Recommend it to anyone trying the distance learn. Yeah, so then if you are a member, just let me know. You can always, we have a chat room in there. So I get notified whenever anybody makes a comment. But you can also make comments through our social media as well. Just let me know that you're a member because sometimes I just see names, but I don't know if you might have a different name on Instagram or whatever. So just let me know. All right. All right. So Mazahira Hassan, so you're in Mumbai. Um, yeah, take us out there. So you want to learn? Um, yeah, it'd be great to go to India. I have not been. Um, it'd be great to go out there. Okay, so keep any more questions coming. So hopefully you guys kind of got the gist of or at least what John Danaher was saying. Um, I'll go ahead and list the points again. So he's saying the deficiencies of modern jiu-jitsu are, and he says he's pretty much addressed the first one, but leg locks. And then number 2, takedowns. Number 3, the lack of ability to impose top position once it's gained, right? So it's kind of easy to roll someone over or to get out from underneath. That's what he said too. It's like either you sweep them or you can hip heist and then get out. He said you stand back up, but I'm saying that don't stand up. Just try to counter them, reverse them, and be on top. And then you impose your top position, right? So that's one of the things that I want you guys to know, that all these things that John Danaher is calling a deficiency of what he calls the product of jiu-jitsu are embodied in authentic catch wrestling. So I think that that's my point. Hopefully you guys have learned something. We had a nice talk. It's been over an hour. It really flew by. So I think we should probably let me get back to some of your questions, and then we'll see if we don't close. We won't close up. So Mazahida, I think there's some other people you can be training with that spent more time with Billy Robinson. Okay. All right. So if you guys want to support what we're doing here, you can always become a member of the channel. You can, if you want to learn the real thing, you can join our CWA Academy on our website. Just we appreciate you even watching our videos. So if there's anything you want me to talk about, or any videos that you want me to do breakdowns on, because so we still have a couple really cool techniques that happened in the latest sumo tournament in Japan that just finished up. So we got a couple more videos coming out of that, and then also you guys seem to really love anime, so we're going to be doing a couple of videos. We've already filmed the first 3 videos for the one really cool fight in that anime called Attack on Titan. So there's another fight that we're going to film videos for as well that have some realistic techniques. So we'll show you what happened, and then maybe how to improve the what happened, right? Because there's I don't know if you guys have watched that anime Attack on Titan, but there's a young guy who has to fight these other people who actually have some martial arts hand-to-hand training. So he's just trying to fight with his determination, but usually these other people are able to get away, right? So he's not able to impose the top position. He's barely even able to get any top position. So we break down a couple of the fights where you see more clear martial arts techniques happening. We break those down, and then kind of give you an option to make it more successful if you're in that same situation that happens in the show. All right, Mr. Lee, love the vids. Thank you, Mr. Lee. Keep watching, please, and share them. All right. Great, Mazahira. Yeah, so yeah, keep in touch. I really want you to learn authentic catch wrestling. So anybody else wants to learn authentic catch wrestling, just keep asking questions. Definitely recommend John Strickland on the East Coast of the United States. Recommend learning from Roy Wood as well, since he is the successor of Billy Riley, and he's really nice. He doesn't have that same kind of style as Billy Riley did. So it'd be much more of a pleasant experience. And also, yeah, so Robbie brings that up. Osamu Matsunami he's at Riley's gym, Kyoto. So he put in decades of training in Japan and in England, in Wigan, for catch wrestling. Okay, all right. So I think we'll go ahead and end it here. We've had a great chat. Let me know any more questions or comments. Go ahead and just add them into the comment box. All right, thank you for watching, and let's keep real wrestling alive.